Tokyo is the most populated metropolitan area in the world. 37 million people. The trains run on time. The streets are clean. The logistics of moving tens of millions of human beings through a finite urban space work with an efficiency the rest of the world cannot replicate. This is the Tokyo you know. What lives underneath that miracle is what we are here for tonight. 15 scary facts about Tokyo that will change how you see the city. Not the tourist version, the version that 37 million people are living inside right now, most of them aware of some of these facts in the way cities teach their residents the things official sources do not say. Stay with me to the end, because fact number 1 happens in Tokyo every single night, is documented by multiple government agencies, and the 37 million people living here have agreed, through the social contract that holds this city together, not to discuss. Let us begin. Tokyo has burned to the ground twice in living memory. The Great Kanto earthquake of 1923 killed approximately 140,000 people and destroyed 45% of the city's structures. The March 1945 firebombing destroyed 16 square miles in a single night, killing 80,000 to 100,000 people in hours. Both times, Tokyo rebuilt so completely that the city gave almost no physical indication of what it replaced. When you stand anywhere in central Tokyo, you're standing on the site of something that burned. The address is the same. The city is not. Beneath what was rebuilt, approximately 900 spaces in Tokyo's underground network are acknowledged in infrastructure management databases, but not fully mapped in current documentation. Tunnel sections, chambers, utility voids, constructed under different administrative conditions and incorporated into the expanding underground network without complete surveying. The underground equivalent of rooms that have not been opened since the previous administration. Tokyo Metropolitan Fire Department dispatch records contain a designation for calls that report a situation that does not fit standard categories calls, in which the caller describes something the dispatcher cannot classify under existing response protocols. The designation routes the call to supervisory review rather than a standard response team. Current and former dispatch personnel have indicated this category is not negligible. The city has a category for what cannot be explained. The category is used regularly. Certain Tokyo train stations also have informal procedures, practices transmitted from senior to junior staff over decades, not written in any official document. Typically involving specific platforms at specific times, specific areas after the last train, specific responses to specific situations the formal procedures do not address. The informal procedures are not secrets. They are the accumulated institutional memory of spaces that have seen a great deal of human experience across long periods. Station staff know what happens at certain platforms after the last train. They follow the informal procedures because the procedures exist for reasons that no longer require explanation. The Sumida River runs through eastern Tokyo, lined with cherry blossom promenades and summer fireworks reflections. It has also been the primary waterway for the disposal of bodies that Tokyo, as Edo under Tokugawa, rule needed to make disappear. Executed criminals, epidemic dead, people who died in circumstances requiring rapid management. The historical documentation of what went into the Sumida River and at what volumes is in the archival record. The riverside promenade does not reference it. Within Tokyo's Shinto shrine network, some maintained for over 1,000 years, there is an institutional understanding of the city's spiritual topography, which specific locations carry elevated kegare, spiritual contamination, requiring ongoing ritual management. This map does not correspond to the heritage map or the tourist map. It corresponds to the history of specific events at specific locations. Some of the addresses, if you look them up, would be ordinary commercial or residential streets. The spiritual contamination map of Tokyo documents the city's history in a way no other map preserves with comparable specificity. Kabukicho, the entertainment district in northeastern Shinjuku, was laid out in the post-war period with a street plan that urban researchers have characterized as deliberately non-navigable for those unfamiliar with it. The narrow streets, the lack of landmark-based orientation in interior blocks, the layout that discourages efficient passage in favor of lingering. Within it all analyzed as features rather than accidents. The commercial explanation, a district where visitors become confused and slow down, is one where they are more likely to enter the establishments they encounter. The design serves the commercial function. The less comfortable explanation is about what happens to people who cannot find their way out. Kabukicho has the highest concentration of documented instances of what Tokyo Metropolitan Police classify as yukyusha incidents. Individuals who have lost orientation in ways that go beyond simple unfamiliarity with the street layout. The district was designed to be difficult to navigate. Occasionally, it produces people who are unable to navigate back out. The police classification exists because the situation is documented. Tokyo has more documented locations of unidentified human remains than any other city in Japan. The Great Kanto earthquake, the 1945 firebombing, the epidemic disease events of the Edo and Meiji periods all produced deaths in volumes that the city's burial infrastructure did not always process with the precision that individual identification requires. The Tokyo Metropolitan Government maintains records of public burial sites where mass casualties from 1923 and 1945 are interred. Some are designated parks or memorials. What the records also document is the number of locations where remains were buried in the immediate aftermath, under conditions that did not support individual identification locations, where the documented presence of human remains is confirmed, but the remains have never been individually identified, and where the markers that would connect remains to specific individuals either were never created or have not survived. The city rebuilt over many of these sites. The parks are pleasant. The parks are on top of something. Under Japanese consumer protection law, real estate agents must disclose if a death has occurred on a property within a certain period. The Jiko Buken designation, a property where a violent or sudden death occurred, carries a real estate market stigma significant enough to require regulatory management. The stigma is real and quantifiable. Jiko Buken properties in Tokyo sell and rent at 30 to 40% below comparable properties where no disclosed death has occurred. The Tokyo Metropolitan Government's official Jiko Buken policy exists because the phenomenon it manages is sufficiently widespread to require administrative attention. In a city of 37 million people, where residential density places deaths in specific apartments, at a rate the total population makes arithmetically significant, the policy is managing a phenomenon present in Tokyo's residential geography at a scale the discount rates and the regulatory framework both acknowledge. The map of Jiko Buken properties in Tokyo is a map of ordinary residential addresses. Most of them are occupied. The discount is paid by people who decided they could live with the knowledge. Platform 0 at Otsuka Station on the Toden-Arakawa line appears in certain archival timetable documents from specific periods in the station's operational history. The platform designation refers to infrastructure that does not correspond to any current physical structure at the station. The administrative explanation involves documentation inconsistency accumulated over decades of incremental change. The version that circulates in Tokyo's urban legend community is not administrative. In that version, Platform 0 is one of the stations on a line that exists in the network only at specific hours, appearing in the timetable for trains that run routes not on the official map, serving destinations that correspond to no station currently in the Tokyo Transit database. The Kisaragi Station legend, a commuter who boards a train and disembarks at a station that should not exist, finds its Tokyo equivalent here. The platform that appears in the records but not in the station. The train that arrives at a destination the timetable does not explain. The melodic jingles that play in Tokyo's subway stations as trains arrive and depart, hassha melodies, are one of the more charming features of the transit system. Different stations have different melodies. Some have become famous enough to be available as ringtones. Long-term passengers develop genuine affection for specific station sounds. The melodies were introduced partly for functional reasons, auditory information about train movements, but the specific deployment of melody and the psychological research behind their design was also motivated by a second function that Tokyo Metro does not advertise in the same way it advertises the pleasant passenger experience. The hassha melodies were developed in consultation with researchers studying platform incident prevention. The melodies were designed in part to interrupt a specific psychological state in a specific moment. They work. The platforms where they were introduced showed measurable reductions in the specific incidents they were designed to interrupt. The pleasant jingles of Tokyo's subway are doing something beyond pleasantness. Most passengers never think about what that is. Akihabara, internationally famous as the center of Japan's electronics retail industry and otaku culture, occupies a site whose immediate post-war identity was entirely different from what was built there. Before the electronics district, and before that identity expanded into otaku culture, the immediate post-war Akihabara was one of Tokyo's primary black markets. The economic disruption of defeat and occupation produced in Tokyo's major open areas informal markets where otherwise unavailable goods could be obtained. Akihabara's open space made it a natural gathering point. The black market identity was replaced by electronics retail so quickly and completely that the transition is rarely discussed in the district's current commercial self-presentation. The shift from black market to authorized retail was managed by economic forces that made authorized retail more profitable once the occupation's informal tolerances became more precisely regulated. The district that replaced the black market with electronic stores did so through commercial normalization that the current manga and anime merchandise does not reference. What came before, in a way that the district has moved very far from. Tokyo experiences hundreds of minor earthquakes each year. Long-term residents develop a specific behavioral response. Feel the shaking, assess its intensity within the first second or two, continue what they were doing, or take appropriate action depending on the assessment. What this behavioral normalization means is that 37 million people have trained themselves to continuously assess a threat their city has not experienced at its full potential in over 100 years. The Great Kanto earthquake of 1923 was a magnitude 7.9 event. The seismological community's assessment of the probability of a comparable event in the coming decades is not zero. The Tokyo residents who pause briefly when a minor tremor moves through the building are performing, involuntarily and automatically, a calculation about the gap between the shaking they are currently feeling and the shaking that the geological record says this region is capable of producing. They go back to what they were doing. The calculation is always the same. The answer is always that this one was not it. In the far western reaches of the Tokyo metropolitan area, in the forested hills of Okutama, there are specific locations where compass readings are consistently anomalous, where magnetic north deviates from true north in ways that exceed normal variation expected from local geological conditions. The anomalies are documented in geological survey data. The explanation involves the specific mineral composition of the volcanic geology magnetite and ferromagnetic minerals in concentrations sufficient to produce local magnetic anomalies. The Okutama forest has also been associated in Japanese folk tradition with specific kinds of supernatural activity for centuries. A mountainous, densely forested region, historically difficult to access, that accumulated the reputation that remote mountain forests in Japan accumulate associations with specific entities, specific events, specific reasons why certain areas were understood to be places that ordinary people did not go. The compass anomalies, discovered through geological survey, correspond in several locations to areas that the folk tradition had already identified as requiring caution. Whether the geological explanation and the folk explanation are documenting the same underlying phenomenon through different frameworks is a question that neither has addressed. Every night, between approximately 1 a.m. and 5 a.m., Tokyo becomes a different city. The trains stop, the streets clear. The city that runs the most efficient logistics operation for human beings in urban history pauses and enters 4 hours of relative quiet. In that quiet, Tokyo does things it does not do when full of people. The maintenance crews repair tracks, resurface roads, clean the underground passages, service the systems the city runs on. They move through Tokyo in the hours when the 37 million are asleep, and in those same hours, in those same empty spaces, the things that the city's daytime activity manages by the sheer weight of human presence, the things that exist in Tokyo, in the way things exist in very old, very large, very intensely inhabited places, are less managed than at any other time. Tokyo goes quiet at 1 a.m. At 5 a.m., it wakes up again. In the 4 hours between, something else is using it. The 37 million who pour back in at 5 a.m. are filling a city that has just finished being something else. They do not notice. The city does not show them.